Let me tell y'all about how Jay-Z's 444 changed my outlook on leaving a financial legacy for my family after I die. What's up, y'all, and welcome to Durag Thoughts. My name is Trevor Went. I'm a visual artist based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and Durag Thoughts is a space where we talk about concepts and topics that challenge perspectives and give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. And I want to talk about how listening to Jay-Z's 444 a couple years ago really kind of changed my outlook on how I was thinking about building a financial legacy for my family to benefit from after I die. If you remember that record or have listened to it, if you haven't listened to it, you should listen to it because it's a dope record. But one of the things that was standing out to me, one song in particular off top that really started spurring these thoughts for me was Jay-Z's The Story of OJ. And there's a couple different sets of lyrics that really kind of hit me. So he talks about this one verse: I bought every V12 engine, wish I could take it back to the beginning. I could have bought a place in Dumbo before it was Dumbo for like 2 million. The same building today is worth 25 million. Guess how I'm feeling? Dumbo. And so it was interesting because he was talking about back in the beginning of his rap career. Basically, he was buying all these expensive cars and all of these different things that just depreciate in value, when in reality back then he could have bought real estate in a space in Dumbo, Brooklyn, and just spent 2 million on it, and now that same property is worth $25 million. And so he took a loss in being able to establish a massive profit from that. And Jay-Z, is a businessman-minded individual. People talk about all the time that people who were drug dealers of the past are really like the business people of today. They just are given a certain product. The people who can multiply those sort of drug industries, they would do well with any product because that's just how their mind works. And Jay-Z's kind of proven that as he stepped into hip hop game and stepped into business ventures and all those different things from, his background as a young dude selling drugs. And so it was really interesting because I was thinking about through that, I'm like, dang, how am I multiplying my money? Am I multiplying my money? Am I taking, the things that I'm given and figuring out how to make that make money for me? The next thing from that song that really stood out to me, where he was like, I bought some artwork for 1 million. 2 years later, that ish worth 2 million. A few years later, that ish worth 8 million. I can't wait to give that ish to my children. And then I was like, dang, like Jay's thinking about investing in things now that are going to continue to multiply in value over time so that he can give that stuff to his kids so that they're already set as they continue to go forward in their lives, and that they can build upon this legacy that Jay and Beyonce are creating. And I was just like, frick, am I doing this? Like, am I thinking big enough? Another spurring moment would be from their Everything Is Love album, where Beyonce says in Boss that my great-great-grandchildren are already rich. That's a lot of brown children on your Forbes list. And then I'm like, am I putting myself in a space where I am creating a big enough vision for my family to be established financially and be able to build upon that after I'm gone? Like, I have this vision for me as an artist to create art that challenges perspectives and gives hope to the marginalized and oppressed. I'm aiming to make some art experiences and tour those and be able to be self-sustained as an artist. But then I started thinking, like, am I thinking about that in a way that's big enough? Am I just thinking about providing for myself, or am I thinking about providing for my posterity as the time goes on? It's like I realized that, yes, it's dope to have a vision that makes change in the world and helps the world grow and changes people's lives and hearts and futures. But I also need to be intentional about providing for those closest to me. It's like I started thinking about, with my art, I have a lot of different lanes that I can walk into. I have a lot of different spaces of influence, a lot of different ways that I can set up things to continue to make money for my family even after I'm gone, if I choose to adequately invest in those things. In reality, this makes me think about, the late great Nipsey Hussle. And Nipsey had this perspective of ownership. He was consistently, elevating and preaching this idea of ownership and how important that was, to the point where he owned his masters for all his music, where he had his different stores in South Central LA, where he was building businesses that would continue to pay dividends. And we've seen it play out. Unfortunately, we've seen it play out the way that it is right now. But we are seeing that Marathon Clothing has made, I think it was like $10 million in profits after he died. Plus all his music is getting streamed exponentially. So all that money's going to his family, all that money's going to his kids. And so we're seeing all these ways where Nip set up ways for his family to continue to be provided for, even when he wasn't able to be around anymore. That sort of perspective is the type of stuff that we need in our culture, in our families, in order to be able to elevate us from the statuses that we exist within. Because the reality of it all is as a person of color, and really as a black man, black people, majority of us in America are still of the lower class. America still exists in a very, very kind of messed up classism kind of system, where people of different classes do have different advantages and stuff. There's reasons why there's certain organizations and high profit companies that didn't pay any income taxes this last year. It's like there are privileges that are being given to people of higher classes, and not to say that we just go and use those things for our advantage and perpetuate classism in another way, but to be able to get beyond lower class structures, you can create change in a greater way. This also really made me think about this parable in the Bible. It's called the parable of the talents. And it's this story where Jesus is telling this parable about this master who has 3 different servants, and he gives them all talents, which was a form of money of that time. And one gets 5, one gets 2, and one gets 1. And the person with 5 doubles that and makes 5 more. The person with 2 doubles that and makes 2 more. And then the person with 1 gets scared and goes and digs it and hides it and to hold on to until the master gets back. And the master comes back, and the master's heated at the one person who hid and dug their talent under the ground and operated out of fear. And although I think this is a parable that's talking about the gift of, the kingdom of God, the reign of God, the gift of the gospel, I think it's something that we can use to inform ourselves in the spaces of actual talents or money as well, because, we all exist in different financial spaces that we just are born into. We all come in and exist with different talents. Some people have more talents than others. Some people have less talents than others, but it's not about what you have. It's what you do with what you have that matters. And so it just has made me think, what am I doing with what I have? Am I maximizing what I can do with what God has given me? Am I being a good steward? Am I being someone who's taking good responsibility and care over the things that God has entrusted me with? And one of the things that God has entrusted me with is gifts and talents to be able to care about my family of the future. I see God in a mindset of caring about generations. Even through the narrative of scripture, we see Abraham, being told that he's going to be the father of many nations. It's always seemed like not a lame, but rather a long game to God, that it's not just about this generation, that you need to be thinking about generations down the line. I mean, Jesus's whole mission comes in to care about and redeem generations past and generations to come. It's a bigger perspective than just you and just your moment. And when you think beyond yourself, then you can truly affect a greater change. I think that's why people can walk into situations like the apostles and be martyred and walk through all sorts of hell and trials and tribulations and all of these different things, because their mindsets are focused beyond just themselves, but it's focused on the future. And I think about if I'm creating a legacy of people who are generous? If I'm creating a legacy of people who value, the mission and the teachings of Jesus, if I'm creating a legacy of people who have, the financial stature to really make strong differences in the world, then we can do some damage in, standing against racism and sexism and classism and homophobia and all these different things that oppress and marginalize people. And so it really made me think, all right, Trevor, you need to be investing. You need to be creating structures in business that, your family can jump into. You need to be making things, whether it's stock images or whatever else, that's just going to keep rolling. No matter if you're dead, that money's still going to be coming in, and someone in your family can be the benefactor of those things. Eventually, hopefully, get some real estate in the mix and things that aren't just depreciating in value, like cars and chains and stupid stuff, like some of that stuff that's just like, it's not gonna, like, the investment in that is not gonna have a longevity. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, have hobbies and enjoy certain things, but like wasting your money on things that depreciate in value is the way that we see so many professional athletes go broke after their careers, or we see all sorts of people fall off because they don't know how to manage themselves financially. And in the midst of it all, I think it's a conversation of stewardship. I don't think it's a conversation of greed. I don't think it's a conversation of being obsessed with money. Now, you can get to those spaces and you have to be watchful of that stuff, because Jesus talks about money like 33% of the time that he talks within the New Testament. And so money's kind of a big deal, and money is the root of all kinds of evil. So we have to be aware of how we're viewing money and if we are serving money. But it's not a bad thing to have money. It's not a bad thing to have financial security. It's not a bad thing to have healthcare and to have no debt in your household, and to have college funds and things to deal with funeral costs and surprise medical bills and all these different things. If you set your family up in a way that they can deal with these things, all of a sudden now we can focus on greater issues, because we're not so focused on just trying to make it by each and every moment of the day. I think one of the things that we don't pay attention to a lot is that generational wealth is one of the greatest disadvantages that we have as Black people. And what I mean by that is our lack of generational wealth, because in the space of slavery and Jim Crow and all these other spaces of things that have oppressed us, most Black people don't have generational wealth. Many white people have generational wealth through things like the Homestead Act and other spaces where white people have always had the privilege in America to accumulate and accrue wealth. And so we don't have the same access to, people with wills and people with properties of the past in our families and all these other spaces of wealth that can set us up financially for generations to come. It's just a different space of life. It's just a different standard. And so we have to be aware of building generational wealth for the generations to come after us, because it can't just be about us. We have to think selflessly. We have to think about, our families. And then when we get our families straight, we can think greater about the people that surround us and have a holistic view of how to empower our people in the midst of this country. So what do y'all think about this concept? What do you think about building a financial legacy for your families as time goes on? Let me know in the comments. Let's start a discussion about this, and maybe throw some ideas that you might have in your head about how to do some of these things, how to start that sort of legacy. Make sure you hit that like button if you gleaned anything from this video. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and hit that notification bell situation so that you can get updated when I drop a new video, whether it's a Durag Thoughts video or photo related stuff. All sorts of different stuff is coming. So make sure you stay up to date, you stay tuned in, and I'll catch y'all on the flip. Be easy, y'all. Peace. Whew. That one's pretty good.